In the world of kart racing games, competition is stiff. Mario Kart Double Dash, Diddy Kong Racing, and of course, Naughty Dog already proved they can compete with Crash Team Racing, a game that many still argue rival Mario Kart at its peak. But here's what people forget. Naughty Dog entered the ring again. A game that often gets lost in the vortex of kart racers, barely cracking top 10 lists, rarely brought up in mainstream conversations, yet it quietly reinvented what arcade racing in this universe could be. Taking the attitude of Jak X, the DNA of Crash Team Racing, and blending it into something more aggressive, more chaotic, and more mature. This would be the final time Naughty Dog themselves would ever touch the Jak and Daxter IP. Welcome to episode 8 of the Naughty Dog Takeover. Today, we're competing in the Kras City Grand Championship and Jak X Combat Racing.
Okay, watch and learn.
Oh, I'm learning all right.
Ellie, stay up, come on! What? Is that it?
You asked for it.
If you're a returning viewer, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, welcome. I'm the Retro Phantom, Digital Handshake. It's nice to meet you. Every week I break down games that help define our childhoods. Right now, we're finishing the Naughty Dog Takeover, and today marks the end of the Jak era. Next week, we shift gears completely and dive into the Uncharted series, along with the first Last of Us. The sequel, that's getting saved for a big end of the year special. If you enjoy long form retrospectives like this, dropping a like really helps push this video in the algorithm, especially for smaller channels like mine. And if you want to stay in the loop for every takeover, every breakdown, and every deep dive, subscribing is the best way to support the movement. And if you're feeling generous, you can always buy me a cup of coffee. Link is in the description. With that said, let's fire up the engines. Before we jump into Jak X, let's rewind for just a moment. If you've been watching the Naughty Dog Takeover and you already know the story, feel free to advance past this recap. I'll give you a moment to do that now. Andy Gavin and Jason Rubin weren't industry hires. They were kids coding on Apple II computers in the early 80s. No tutorials, no safety net, no AI, just curiosity and obsession. From Jam Software to cold calling Electronic Arts as teenagers, they built their careers the hard way. They learned what early publishers can give you and what they could take. Crash Bandicoot made them a household name under Naughty Dog during the PlayStation era. 3 mainline games and a kart racer involved millions of games being sold. But there was one major problem with this IP. They did not own Crash. So when the PlayStation 2 generation arrived and budgets skyrocketed, they made a move that would change everything. They sold Naughty Dog to Sony. Not out of weakness, but out of foresight. Under Sony, they built Jak and Daxter, the precursor legacy, a seamless open world platformer that flexed the PS2 hardware in ways few studios ever could. Then came Jak 2, darker, riskier, influenced by the industry shift sparked by Grand Theft Auto 3. Jak grew up, and so did Naughty Dog. But while Jak 3 was in development, something bigger was happening behind the scenes. In 2004, Jason Rubin stood on stage at the DICE Summit not to promote a game, but to challenge the industry. He argued that video games were being marketed like packaged goods instead of art, that developers were invisible, replaceable, hidden behind publisher branding. This wasn't a CEO. He was speaking as a content creator.
This is the biggest tragedy, I think, for us, is that we really do have our head in the sand. I mean, I didn't get invited to my own premiere. It doesn't really bother me. It's not going to hurt me. I'm okay. I like making games. That's fine, but that actually is not going to get you by in the future, because that model is dying. If you don't have the attitude, you don't stand up and fight for your rights, you're going to get squashed, because we're unfortunately moving in with sharks. And I like the sharks, by the way, the Hollywood sharks, but that's the way our business is going to have to be run, and you're going to have to struggle. And the struggle's not just going to be on your keyboard, not just going to be with your mouse. The struggle is going to be with the world, to get yourself out there and to proclaim your value. Very, very important. You have to get real about this. It's not necessarily whether you go to a party or whether or not this or that or the other minor thing happens. It's the fact that they understand your value is there. That's what's the bottom line.
Days later, headlines broke. Jason Rubin would step down after Jak 3. Not long after, Rubin Gavin would leave as well. The two kids who built Naughty Dog from floppy disk and bedroom coding sessions were gone. And this is where the real transition begins. Because as Rubin stepped away, another name stepped forward. Evan Wells. In my Jak 2 video, I told viewers to remember that name. Wells had joined Naughty Dog years earlier, working closely on Crash and Jak, but now he became the public face of the studio, handling press, leading presentations, representing the company at E3. Jak 3 wasn't just another sequel, it was the final chapter of the Rubin Gavin era, and the quiet beginning of something new.
Well, Jak, it's over. There's just one thing left to say. I am your father.
What?
I'm your father!
Right, yeah.
Listen to your feelings.
You're not my
No,
father.
seriously, your mother and I...
The epic Jak trilogy is coming to its dramatic conclusion.
Before you were born, obviously.
Rest assured, it won't end like this.
Now that we're all caught up, we can finally talk about Jak X. The first real information we received about the next Jak project dropped on April 8th, 2005. Ed Lewis of IGN published an article outlining Sony's upcoming lineup, and right at the top of that list, a surprise. He wrote, Sony Computer Entertainment America has officially announced today the sequels to 3 of its best games from last year. Jak and Daxter, Ratchet & Clank, and Sly Cooper will all be returning this coming fall with some brand new adventures. These aren't your typical sequels either. Expect plenty of surprises as the game take on some new directions. The first title he mentioned in this article was Jak X Combat Racing. Not Jak 4, not another platformer, combat racing. By 2005, the franchise has sold over 7.5 million copies. The trilogy was a proven success. But instead of forcing a 4th mainline entry, Naughty Dog decided to switch gears, literally. And if that formula sounds familiar, it should ring a bell. After the Crash trilogy came Crash Team Racing. After the Jak trilogy would come Jak X Combat Racing. This wasn't just a mascot game. The team planned to take the driving mechanics from Jak 3, specifically the Wasteland vehicles, and massively expand them into something more aggressive, more destructive, more mature. This wasn't rubber band racing. This was combat.
Start your engines because the folks at Naughty Dog have a new game. It emerged from their action platform success with the Jak and Daxter precursor trilogy.
Upon completing Jak 3, we'd realized that we had a lot of fun with the vehicles in that game, and we decided that we really wanted to focus our attention, a full game's worth of attention, on just vehicles alone. It really allows you to play with Jak and Daxter in a brand new way.
We wanted to make something that was appropriate for the way that our fans have matured, that would offer them something new, but that would also offer them some familiar characters in new situations.
Thus was born Jak X Combat Racing.
Jak X combat racing can be summed up with the simple phrase of leather, napalm, and gasoline.
It's not really a story about the trilogy. It's not about the Jag universe per se. It's its own separate thing. And so we started developing a story just around the idea of racing itself.
At Naughty Dog, we love story and we love telling it. And we also love gameplay, of course. That's our bread and butter. So we've gone to great lengths to make sure that the story and the game fit together.
I finally get to meet the great racer, Jak.
And?
And what?
Our intrepid heroes are drawn into a web of deceit and destruction that will have you on the edge of your car seat.
The storyline in the game centers around Jak and Daxter attending the reading of the will of Crew, their old nemesis from Jak 2.
Hello, nearly friends. We're mostly enemies.
And then they discover that from beyond the grave he has poisoned them and that he will only give them the antidote if they compete in this racing competition on his behalf.
My advice is trust no one. Win the race and save yourselves.
It's all the action excitement you want. But at the same time, you have sort of this overlaying and underlying motivation, this emotional connection to different characters and finding out why you're doing what you're doing and what's going to happen in the end.
As you race and fight, you'll have your pick from a fleet of vehicles that you can customize.
We have over 12 vehicles that you'll be able to play throughout the course of the game, and we also have some secret vehicles available for unlocking.
For each and every one of these cars, we designed somewhere between like 3 and 5 whole different sets of body parts for them. And they're all interchangeable. Put on some special spoilers, switch out the wheels, and before you know it, you have a car which is absolutely unique to you.
Your whirlwind adventure will take you on a journey to vast, faraway worlds.
You're talking about big terrain, big jumps, huge open vistas, and things that you've just never seen before in a racing game.
We have 31 different venues and they all connect together, so we have a lot of different combinations for all the tracks.
We're always loading the next level of the game just ahead of the player. And this allows us to have an incredible variety of graphics.
The big wide world of choice and opportunity. Just pick a mode and off you go.
The adventure mode is, of course, where we tell most of the story. And then as you play through the events of the adventure mode, we drop extra little nuggets of story on the player as the events unfold.
Jak X combat racing has so many different types of racing. You have circuit racing, you have deathmatch, which deathmatch is basically you get out there and you're going head to head with everybody else. You've got the actual death races, which are on the same courses that you've been playing for clock and for speed. Now you're going out there trying to kill as many vehicles as you can and as quickly as you can. There are artifact races where you're trying to collect as many things as you possibly can. Again, you can do that with team or with not team. Lots of different arenas, lots of different tracks. There's just a lot of different modes.
So we've put together a dozen different events across 31 different venues. So the combinatorial matrix of event and venue types is huge. You could play this game for years.
In this realm of mayhem, it pays to ensure your health. You better load up on weapons and check your 6.
A wise man once said, "Be watchful of those in front of you, but beware of those behind."
What wise man said that?
I did.
The weapon system is based around 2 different weapon slots. You've got one on either side of the screen. One's for forward-facing weapons, and the other one is for rear weapons and also for special weapons.
We have a lot of different weapons. If you use them well, you can upgrade them, so they're getting better and better.
And there's a lot of sort of rock, paper, scissors, countermeasures, and attacks and strategies while you're on the track.
Combat racing is so popular it can't be contained. It's breaking out in a big way around the online world.
We offer the player the ability to go online with 6 other people, so you can actually battle it out in every single mode online. Anything that's available in single player, you can play online as well.
Jak X Combat Racing was designed with online in mind from day one. You have everything you could ever possibly want with an online element, with the lobbies and with clans and all the things you've come to expect. But in addition to that, you have customization of every race. You can do single player, full screen. You can do split screen online with multiple players. It gives you, the player, lots of choices to customize for themselves.
Best part of this experience is having fun.
What I love about Jak X the most is just how much fun I have playing it. I can't put the controller down. I just have to get in there and have another race, have another rematch, and just talk a little more smack.
It's core gameplay. It's seat of the pants, white knuckles, do or die gameplay, and everybody seems to really respond to it.
It's great. I mean, we also playing a lot, maybe too much sometimes. It's a blast.
It's going to blow players away in terms of the variety of the play and the new directions that we're taking Jak and Dax in their quest to win the prize, save the day.
So keep on that gas, keep on that turbo, and go around the corners and just go white knuckle. And it's Mach 3 with your hair on fire. That's really what it's all about.
Let's race.
Jak and Daxter really kind of came out of a culmination of a series of brainstormings with a number of people, trying to think about how we were going to make an action hero who was a little more accessible in a world that was much bigger than you'd seen before.
We wanted to focus on the speed, action, and insane intensity that you get from an arcade racer. We wanted to include the customization and personalization you get with a racing sim. We wanted to have the over-the-top carnage and wreckage that you get from a vehicular combat game, and then we wanted to tie that all up in the Jak and Daxter universe. That's Jak X.
We've got an amazing team of animators who come from all over, both from the video games industry and from the feature film industry. They just do a mind-blowing job in bringing the characters to life.
We hired a student right out of Pasadena Art Center for vehicle design. He is actually major in transport design. He had a choice of going to Detroit and designing real vehicles or coming to Naughty Dog and actually working on Jak X combat racing. Fortunately for us, he chose Naughty Dog and has just kicked out dozens of incredible vehicle designs.
What makes Jak X so great is the variations of the tracks and the terrain. We have such incredibly interesting designs. Yasuhara did a lot of the track designs.
So some of the locations in a game will be familiar to players of the other Jak games, but the other whole half of the game is in all new locations.
Welcome, race fans, to another turbocharged season of high-stakes, high-speed racing, as the best racers of the world swap fate in their quest to claim the Kras City Grand Championship Trophy.
For Jak X, we brought everybody back. Everybody that's ever been in the universe that we really seems to be characters that people wanted to see again. Susan Eisenberg is back as Ashlyn.
What the hell did you do to us?
And of course, Mark Irwin came back as Jak.
We can do this. We can race. And we can beat Crew at his own game.
And Max Casella, who's the voice of Daxter.
Jak, next time you invite me to one of your little parties, don't.
He's my secret weapon, really. There's an old adage that says, that if you have a scene that's sagging, have somebody run in with a gun. Well, in my case, whenever a scene's really bad, have Daxter again say something, because he always adds so much life to the scene.
To me, as a game designer, audio is a really incredibly important thing. This game, we've worked with a couple of really awesome artists to create the soundtrack for the game.
We have Queens of the Stone Age for the intro. It's really an amazing intro.
Most of the game's soundtrack has been made by Mr. Billy Howardell. His fans, of course, will know him from his work with A Perfect Circle. And he's crafted a whole variety of amazing tracks for us.
We allow 6 players to race against each other at the same time. You can wear a headset so that you can have an open channel and talk to all those people out there. We have a lobby which is fully featured with clans and buddies. So, we're really trying to make it a very rich online experience.
But in addition to that, you have customization of every race. So everything from the wind parameters to the weapons used in the race, the number of track laps, the number of the time limits, the amount of collectibles. These things are all adjustable online with you and your friends.
We've gone to great pains to give online players all the tools that we know that they need and love to be able to make their online community experience really great. We've created buddy lists so that you can browse lists of players that you've played against recently and add them to a list of friends. And then when you come online, you can very quickly and easily see which of your buddies are online. We also have clans, which of course, a bit like clubs or racing teams that the players can form and invite each other to join.
And you've got so many choices, not only in weapons, but in track types and in different types of opponents that you're playing.
But this game is actually more about the fast action, intense speed that you'd imagine from an arcade racer or a racing sim.
We've been really pleased with the reception we've got because people have been saying that while they've seen this style of play in one game before, that style of play in another game, they've never really seen it all together in one game like this.
When the going gets tough, Jak will get us out of it.
We're just gonna have to win the whole thing.
Now, remember, this is the first Naughty Dog game where Andy Gavin and Jason Rubin were not involved. The founders were gone, and stepping into the director's chair, Amy Hennig. And I want you to remember that name because next month during the Uncharted breakdowns, we're going to be saying it a lot. Amy Hennig didn't come from programming roots like Rubin and Gavin. She came from storytelling. In the 1980s, she graduated from the University of California, Berkeley with a degree in English literature. She briefly attended film school before landing freelance work at Atari on an unreleased title called Electrocop. And that was it. Film school pivoted into game development. From there, she worked at EA, Crystal Dynamics, and Eidos Interactive. By the late 90s, she transitioned from artist and designer to full director. Her directorial debut, Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver, a narrative-heavy, character-driven action game that built a cult following. So when Rubin stepped down, it wasn't random that Hennig stepped up. She wasn't filling a seat. She represented a shift from founder-led innovation to story-driven cinematic ambition. And Jak X became the bridge between those eras. With a new director and a new internal structure under Evan Wells and Stephen White, Jak X Combat Racing launched exclusively on the PS2 on October 18, 2005 for North American markets, the 28th for Australian markets, and November 4th, 2005 for European markets. And whether fans realized it at the time or not, this would be the final Jak game Naughty Dog would ever develop.
That's shrapnel just waiting to happen.
Hey!
Let's jack things up. I think we got a winner.
Sweet, AC.
Jak X, rated T for teen.
Now, before we talk mechanics and combat systems, we need to talk about the story, because surprisingly, Jak X actually has one. This game takes place 1 year after the Darkmaker threat was stopped in Jak 3. Haven City has been rebuilt, peace has returned, but over in Kras City, a gritty crime-infested racing capital, a new obsession has taken hold: combat racing. Jak, Daxter, Ashland, Samos, Kira, and Torn are summoned to Kras for the reading of Crew's will. And if you remember Crew from Jak 2, you already know nothing good comes from that name. During a celebratory toast, a pre-recorded message from Crew plays, and that's when the bomb dropped. They've been poisoned, and the only way to receive the antidote, compete and win the Kras City Grand Championship. So the stakes aren't just pride, they're survival.
Let's get this over with and blow this berg. Who called us here anyway?
Crew's daughter, Rain.
Crew had a daughter?
Crew? Reproduced? Ew! Can you imagine what that tub of jelly must look like?
Thank you for coming to Kras City. It looks like some didn't make it. Ah, well. I'm Rain. Before Father died, his wishes were simple: to have his will played for his closest associates, and for us to drink to his passing. This special vintage he kept for the very occasion, to toast his death. Here's to old friends, and to Father's untimely death. So without further delay, his message to us.
Hello, nearly friends, and mostly enemies. If you're listening to this message, then I must be dead. Oh, well. As you all know, I loved racing almost as much as I loved weapons. Alas, I never fulfilled my living dream of winning the biggest race of all, the Kras City Grand Championship. But even in death, I will field the greatest racing team ever assembled and win the biggest race on the planet. You are the best of the best, and you will race for me.
Never
Forget it!
I expect you're all riled up by now, so let me tell you why you will race, and you will win. If all wind is planned, you just give a touching toast in my honor. Sorry to say, but I put poison in that special vintage. Quite unsporty, am I right?
Father!
This is where Rain probably gets upset. Sorry, dear. It's a slow-acting poison, or you'd already be dead. You have just enough time to finish this year's racing season. If you race for me and win, my associates will provide you each with an antidote to the poison. Simple, eh?
What the hell did you do to us? Please, I didn't know. I drank it too. Father never did play favorites.
Yeah? Well, your father's crazy.
We're all crazy for coming here!
I think she's telling the truth.
Well, it's been 1 minute, so I figure by now, you're all arguing about how to get out of this mess. My advice is trust no one. Win the race and save yourselves.
Jack, next time you invite me to one of your little parties, don't!
We can do this. We can race. And we can beat Crew at his own game.
Father bought us the best mobile racing garage money can buy, and each of you has a racing car waiting. We're in this together, so let's get to it.
The championship is co-hosted by the over-the-top TV personality GT Blitz and Pecker, which adds this almost satirical sports broadcast layer to the entire tournament. But as the races unfold, something feels off. Jak begins learning that many of the racers are tied to a criminal syndicate led by a mysterious figure named Mizo, and that's when this stops feeling like a sports tournament and starts feeling like a setup. Meanwhile, Kiera becomes the team's lead mechanic, upgrading vehicles and pushing performance to new heights. Sick returns to lend support, Kleber provides competitive rivalry, Razor, a retired racing legend, re-enters the circuit, and an ex-Crimson Guard combat robot UR-86 joins Mizo's ranks. The roster feels dangerous, unstable, and the more Jak wins, the more desperate Mizo becomes. One of the more interesting arcs here is Kiera. She doesn't want to fix engines, she wants to race. But Samos, her father, forbids it. He's still protective, he's still cautious, and that tension quietly builds throughout the game until she finally decides to step into the driver's seat herself. Meanwhile, Rain, Crew's daughter, is digging through her father's old video diaries, claiming she's trying to help them uncover Mizo's identity. But something about her involvement never quite feels innocent. As the championship reaches its final stretch, a mystery racer enters the competition, and in a twist that's honestly pretty solid for a racing spinoff, GT Blitz reveals itself to be Mizo, the loudmouth TV host, the flamboyant presenter, the mastermind behind the poison. After being exposed, Mizo steals the antidote and flees, forcing Jak into one final pursuit. Jak wins the championship, but that's not enough. He hunts Mizo down, and after a brutal chase, Mizo crashes in a fiery wreck. Before dying, he reveals something darker. His father's obsession with racing destroyed his family. That obsession turned into hatred, and that hatred turned into murder. Mizo didn't want control of Kras City. He wanted ownership of the sport that ruined his childhood. And in classic Jak fashion, he hunts him down to the very end. Then the car explodes. The crew celebrates at a bar. Samos finally acknowledges Kiera's skill. The team is alive, the antidote works, but then comes one last twist. Rain was innocent. She knew about the poison. She manipulated the events to secure dominance over Kras City's criminal underworld. She used Jak and the team to eliminate Mizo and protect herself. But she spares them, and Jak, he lets her walk away. The game ends not with vengeance, but with acceptance. And finally, after 3 mainline games and this spinoff, Jak and Kiera finally share a kiss, ending the story.
And just then, I pushed Jak to safety as the car exploded in a fiery inferno.
Wow, great story, Dax.
Great racing, everyone.
Wonderful driving.
Thanks.
I was talking to my daughter.
Well, everyone, I must be on my way. Thank you all for helping me take out my father's enemies. This town will be a better place for it. And thank you, Jak, for showing me the light.
Take care.
Be better than your father.
You know, that old girl ain't so bad. Hey, she forgot Crew's diary.
Hello, reindeer. So it's our little secret, eh? Just pour it into your glass first. 3 seconds and no more. And yours will have no poison. The rest will get a full dose. Then we'll take down that miserable Mizo and be the top crime family in Kras City. I only wish I could be there to give you a big hug. Like father, like daughter, eh?
Oh my god.
Call a meeting. I want every crime boss present. That's right. I'm running this town now. Father was too soft. No, don't eliminate the racers. They were my friends. Although probably not any longer. Ah, well, it's just business.
Who would have thunk?
Well, if you'd all been thinking with your heads.
Yeah, Jack. The important thing is we won. And we're alive.
And we brought down that scumbag Mizo.
And we rocked the racing circuit, right, Jack? I said, right, Jack? Hey! Will you kiss her already? Sheesh. Oh, yeah. That's what I call a photo finish.
You're such an animal. Oh, Daxter, you're amazing.
What?
Now, when you actually get your hands on Jak X Combat Racing, one thing becomes immediately clear. This is not a lazy kart spin-off. Under the hood, the engine is clearly built from the same foundation as Jak 2 and Jak 3, and that's a good thing. Animations remain fluid, character models retain their personality, and environments are expansive in a way that most arcade races at the time simply weren't. Kras City feels gritty and industrial, while returning areas like Haven City and the Wasteland still carry that signature Naughty Dog polish. Vehicle models are sharp and fully customizable. From paint jobs to performance upgrades, there's enough variation that your car actually feels like yours. And once again, the animation team doesn't miss, whether it's suspension, impact, or character expression in cutscenes. There's a consistency here that shows this was never treated like a side project. Now, let's talk about the difficulty, because Jak X is tough, but it's tough by design. Unlike Jak 2, where difficulty spikes sometimes felt punishing, here the challenge feels controlled. The AI is aggressive and smart. Opponents won't roll over just because you're low on health. They won't magically let you back in the first place. They pressure you, cut you off, weapon you down, and they do it consistently. But here's the difference. It rarely feels unfair. You'll yell, you'll restart events, you'll definitely drop a few expletives, but you'll also feel you're improving. The difficulty curve encourages mastery, especially when drifting and boost management. The game is split into 2 primary modes, Adventure and Exhibition. Adventure mode is where the story unfolds, and you'll primarily control Jak as you compete in the Eco Cup Championships. The structure is divided into 4 cups, Red Eco, Yellow Eco, Green Eco, and Blue Eco, and those are competed in a fixed class order, Class 1 through Class 4. Within each cup, events vary. You're not just racing laps over laps. You have circuit races, death matches, freeze rally events, traffic races, power cell hunts, stadium battles, and so much more. Some are straightforward lap-based races, while others completely shift the objective. Death matches, in particular, feel chaotic in the best way possible. And when it comes time to compete for trophies, the standard circuit becomes brutal. What separates Jak X from other mascot racers is the Eco Combat system. The 4-minute Eco pickups during races have special features. Blue Eco fills your turbo meter. The Green Eco restores your health. The Yellow Eco provides offensive weapons, while the Red Eco gives you defensive capabilities. The combat balance here is surprisingly deep. Yellow lets you actively destroy opponents, while Red shields and protects. But the real twist is the Dark Eco meter. As you deal damage, a Dark Eco gauge fills up. Once full, your weapons evolve into stronger, more destructive versions. It creates a risk-reward system where aggression actually pays off. This is not passive racing, it's weaponized. The controls are intuitive at first glance. Accelerate, brake, drift, boost, the standard racing stuff. but the physics system demands respect. Power sliding is essential. Boost chaining around corners is how you separate yourself from the pack. But if you misjudge a wall angle or hit a ramp wrong, the physics can punish you. There are moments where you'll 180 unexpectedly or flip awkwardly in tighter areas like Haven sewer sections. It takes practice, quite a bit of practice. But once you master drift control and boost management, the game opens up in a huge way. Now, the replay value is where Jak X really shines. All single player events are playable in multiplayer. You can run split screen offline, or at that time you could have competed online with up to 6 players, which for 2005 on PS2 was actually impressive, as long as you weren't on dial-up. Now, there are tons of unlockable vehicles, upgrades, customization options, characters, and speaking of characters, save data bonuses were a cool touch. Having data from earlier Jak titles or even Ratchet Deadlocked unlocked additional racers, including Ratchet himself. It felt like a small Sony crossover celebration. For completionists, this game can last a long time. Sound design is elite tier Naughty Dog. Engines roar with weight, tires screech convincingly, explosions feel impactful, impacts carry punch. The soundtrack leans heavily instrumental, fitting the industrial racing vibe of Kras City. The only minor drawback is repetition. You hear the same tracks often, but the mixing and implementation fit the gameplay perfectly. Voice acting during cutscenes remains strong. The cast doesn't feel like they're phoning in just because it's a racing game. It still feels like Jak. At its core, Jak X is that hybrid. It takes the combat depth of a vehicular arena game and blends it with the structure of a kart racer. It carries the grit of Jak 2 and Jak 3 rather than the playful tone of Crash Team Racing. It's aggressive, it's fast, but it also rewards mastery. And most importantly, it doesn't feel like filler. For a trilogy racer, it stands on its own mechanically and giving us that last great taste of the Jak series. When Jak X Combat Racing launched in October 2005, the reception was strong. IGN gave the game an 8 out of 10, praising its aggressive combat design and calling it another example of Naughty Dog's technical consistency on the PlayStation 2. They specifically highlighted how polished the driving felt and how the combat mechanics elevated it beyond standard kart racers. However, they did notice that the physics could occasionally be awkward, especially when collisions or wall rides didn't behave the way players had expected. GameSpot scored it a 7.9, emphasizing how much depth existed beneath what looked like a simple arcade racer. They praised a variety of modes, death matches, rally events, circuit races, and acknowledged that the game demanded real skill. But they also mentioned that the campaign structure could feel repetitive over time, and that some difficulty spikes might discourage more casual players. Eurogamer landed at a 7 out of 10, calling it another crumb of history repeating, referencing Naughty Dog's habit of following trilogies with racers. They respected the mechanical depth and customization, but they also questioned whether the genre shift was necessary in a market already saturated with kart racers. And that right there, that's where the problem begins, because mechanically, critics agreed. The AI was intelligent, the combat was layered, the drift system rewarded mastery, the customization added depth, the multiplayer had legs, the presentation remained polished. This wasn't a lazy cash-in, it was a well-designed aggressive arcade racer. But 2005 was a transitional year. The PlayStation 3 was on the horizon, the PS2 era was closing, the industry was shifting again. By that point, the Jak trilogy had already completed its arc. The emotional climax had already happened in Jak 3. So even though Jak X reviewed well, it felt to some like an epilogue rather than the main event. On top of that, the racing genre was crowded. Mario Kart Double Dash still dominated conversations. Arcade racers were competing with Burnout, Need for Speed, and Midnight Club, and mascot racers became expected rather than revolutionary. Jak X didn't reinvent kart racing the way Kras City Racing did in 1999. It redefined it, and refinement doesn't always generate headlines. Another factor is the tone. Jak X wasn't colorful like Kras City Racing. It carried the grit of Jak 2 and Jak 3 into a genre most players associated with fun chaos rather than industrial hostility. That tonal identity made it unique, but it also made it harder to categorize. Was it a party racer? Not really. Was it a sim racer? Not even close. It sat in the middle, and sometimes games that sit in the middle don't get remembered as clearly. But here's what's interesting. None of the major reviews called it bad. Not one outlet dismissed it as unnecessary. Most critics were about physics, quirks, repetition, and campaign structure or soundtrack repetition. Not broken systems, not unfinished mechanics, and not a lack of content. So you ask yourself, why was it forgotten? You may say, because it released at the end of an era? Because it wasn't a numbered sequel? Because the founders had left? Because the next Naughty Dog game would be completely different and redefine what the studio was known for? When people think Naughty Dog today, they think Uncharted, Last of Us, cinematic storytelling. Jak sits between identities. It's the bridge between mascot platformer and cinematic action future. And bridges rarely get celebrated. They get crossed. Now, being honest, recently I was riding to the gym with one of my closest friends, someone who knows games just as well as I do. We started talking about racing games, and immediately he brought up Diddy Kong Racing, Mario Kart 64, and even Crash Nitro Kart because of how relevant Crash still feels today. So I asked him about Jak X. He had zero idea what I was talking about. What's crazy is this is someone who loves the Jak trilogy. He talks about how much he enjoyed the original 3 games, but when it came to Jak X, nothing. And honestly, I get it. 2005 was one of the greatest years in gaming history. You got Resident Evil 4, you got God of War, you had Shadow of the Colossus. Competition itself was brutal. And while the Jak series had been a massive success, Jak X released in a year where landmark titles were reshaping entire genres. On top of that, it wasn't Jak 4. It wasn't a platformer. It wasn't the emotional climax of the trilogy. It was a racing game. And sometimes that's all it takes for history to shift its spotlight elsewhere. If it wasn't for modern digital downloads and ports, some players might never even know this game even existed. And that says a lot about game preservation and how easy it is for quality titles to fall between generations. Even when I replayed the series for this channel, I played the HD collection on the PS3. And guess what? It included the Jak trilogy, but not Jak X. It was already being left out of the conversation. But here's the thing. If you love Jak 3, especially the vehicle sections, and you ever wish there was a game that lets you just lean into that chaos, Jak X delivers. It's not just the end of the series. It's a celebration of it. The characters return, the mechanics evolve, the tone matures, the combat gets deeper. And if I inspired one person to check this game out and give it a real chance, then I've done my job as a content creator. Because forgotten doesn't mean bad. Sometimes it just means overshadowed. If you made it into this video, seriously, thank you. This one was a little shorter, but felt important. If you enjoyed it, dropping a like really helps push this video in the algorithm, especially for smaller channels like mine. If you're watching on your phone, give that extra tap, give that extra hype, it goes a long way. Next week, we shift eras. March is officially dedicated to the Uncharted series, and we're starting with the first game, the beginning of a whole new identity for Naughty Dog. If you want to stay in the loop on that journey, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on what's coming next. And if you're feeling generous, you can always buy me a cup of coffee. The link is in the description. With that said, this is the Retro Phantom, signing out.